So, for listeners who've tuned into this conversation, this intergenerational talk that we have every week, um, we sometimes it's about what's in the air, sometimes it's about what we're thinking. Today, it's a news story. I mean, today we are at the white hot center of this massive case against Meta, and we've been watching it pretty closely from a distance. Obviously, we have a lot of friends that are involved, but we just thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of update everyone in pretty simplistic terms uh, of what's going on and what we're thinking it's moving toward. So for the purposes of this pod, let's just call it Oakland because it's the case is taking place in Oakland. Um, and I just thought it would be good to clarify as best as you and I can understand it. There's 29 attorney generals involved,
Yeah.
four of whom are the lead plaintiffs in this, you know, great big case. But really, I think it's worth just starting the conversation by saying, as opposed to the Los Angeles case or New Mexico, this is really 29 states together saying to Meta, we think you're causing harm to children. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's enormous, especially when you think long term about potential damages or at least what an outcome could be if again, I'm no lawyer, but if there was a possibility that an outcome, you know, means product changes are necessary, that's 29 states that Meta has to change their format in, which then one would assume, okay, if 29 states require something, you might just have to make changes for every single user that you're dealing with, which would be a huge deal, especially if it is attacking the addictiveness of the design that is, I think, at the heart of the case.
You know, you and I started talking about tobacco a year ago, well,
Mhm.
not quite a year ago. And, you know, we were early and consistent about the fact that we think this is a watershed moment for the way that social media is going to behave. And, you know, between you and I, there were days I felt more strongly about that analogy than others.
Yeah.
Uh, but you're now seeing mainstream media say that pretty consistently.
Mhm.
Um, and there was some concern among people in the various pieces of the movement that after, you know, Los Angeles, maybe the mainstream media would just get tired of this story.
Mhm.
But I'm seeing more and more coverage coming out of Oakland, which, you know, feels like a drumbeat, feels like tobacco. Um, Yesterday was the first day of witnesses, and the first witness was Arturo Bejar, who we know well and adore, and is um, as deeply inside the meta story as any other person, maybe other than Francis Haugen.
Yeah.
And you know, Arturo, when we spoke to him, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, tells the story about his young daughter who starts getting these objectionable images sent to her. And he was working at Meta at the time. It was his second stint there. And he went to Mark and said, look, we've got to do something about this.
Mhm.
So he's an insider. He's the father of a victim.
Mhm.
And he doesn't pound the desk. He's not a yeller or screamer. He's a very sweet, carefully worded intellectual.
Yeah.
And Meta fought to keep him off the stand at this case,
Mhm.
and they lost.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, as we're recording this, Arturo is on his way back to his second day of testimony
Mhm.
in Oakland, and uh, that's exciting. Uh, um, Here, this is. I'll read you the summary.
Mhm.
Arturo says he warned Meta leadership that the company's safety measures dramatically understated what young people were actually experiencing on the platform. He's previously raised those concerns directly with Mark Zuckerberg and other senior executives.
Yeah.
Um, so hard for Mark to get on the stand and say, golly, I don't recall my emails or conversations with Arturo. Um, it's about knowledge, right? I mean, he knew and he chose
Mhm.
not to do anything. And it came down to money. I
Yeah.
mean, I actually think what Arturo told me was he proposed changes in the code base And Mark basically said, we can do 20% of that.
Hmm.
And Arturo was like, that's not enough to make a material difference. And Mark
Hmm.
was like, it's too expensive for us to protect children, which is insane. Um, the other thing that I'm hearing is this phrase, hook, harvest, hold.
Mm.
Um, I mean, alliteration, very good tool when you use it. Um, what do you understand that theory is?
Well, from my notes and what I have recently read, the understanding is that it's you hook the users, you hold them for as long as you can, and then harvest their data. Um, again, like I think that if you're just thinking rhetorically or like thinking in terms of, the argument that you're building, you kind of you need that press coverage. You need people to be upset about this. So I think providing an easy slogan for people to understand why you're going into court in the first place is, super important. And I think hook, harvest, hold, like that, it makes sense. I think also a lot of users understand it because they can see their own experience within it, which I think is really important because oftentimes I think these arguments, you know, they can become lofty. Like obviously, like you can talk all day about the philosophical underpinning of like why do we even need social media in the first place? But like at the core of this argument is just the addictive design and kind of exploitation of children. So I think the hook, harvest, hold is just a very clever mnemonic device for allowing the public in and also for simplifying an argument that will I hope resonate with the jury that's going to be there. Obviously, though, the jury is advisory, so they don't have the final.
Well, we'll talk about the jury in a second because there's a whole other wrinkle that we were learning about this morning. But to compare this case to Los Angeles, for example, Los Angeles was a victim talking about mental health harms.
Yeah.
What these states are saying is there's a federal law that protects children under 13 from Meta harvesting their data without parents' permission, and they broke the law. So in
Yeah.
some ways, it's a little less emotional and a little more fact-based.
Yeah.
And what our friend Laura Marquez Garrett and her team was able to do in the Los Angeles case was get a lot of data, a lot of what was that previously private data, confidential data on the record. So presumably Oakland is using all of that data as well. So you're seeing a kind of a compounding series of risks.
Yeah.
Um, uh, let's talk about the jury because this was news to me, and there's a judge involved, and it turns out that the jury is advisory.
Hmm.
I'd never heard of such a thing. Had you?
No, no, I'm from a family of lawyers and I never heard of that. I did minimal research on it. Obviously, so the important kind of takeaways from understanding an advisory jury is they are there to assist the judge and provide recommendations. However, the final decision it is in the hands of the judge. So the judge is Judge Rogers in this case. So an advisory jury, when I read it, oftentimes it, in the description it said that they're often used to help provide a layperson or public perspective to a more complex issue. So I assume that that's kind of what's at play here right now. But yeah, no, I had never heard of that being used before in a civil proceeding. But again, I'm no lawyer, so maybe this is common, but in a big trial like this, I hadn't seen it.
And the judge turns out to be, I mean, the thing about technology is there's lots of, Meta's going to make claims, the plaintiffs are going to make claims. The judge turns out to be a really seasoned tech judge. I mean,
Mhm.
she was the judge on the Epic Games versus Apple case,
Mhm.
um, which, the verdict was somewhat mixed.
Mhm.
But then Apple kind of like treaded water and didn't act in the way that the judge, and so she got rather testy with Apple.
Mhm.
So this is not her first rodeo,
Yeah.
and I think Meta trying to bulldoze her will not work. And what I like about the idea of an advisory jury is, I mean, again, from our perspective, because we have a very clear outcome in mind, uh, to have, a jury of our peers say to her, you know, so presumably some of them are parents.
Mhm.
Be interesting to know that how many of them are parents.
Yeah.
But to have the jury say to the judge, "Look, this concerns us. We're concerned about our children."
Mhm.
Um, now, to be fair, we don't know that that will be the jury's, but you would think that that would be what they wouldn't come in. Would be interesting to think. I guess I'm like curious how the jury was selected. I don't know if that was a public. I guess there probably were reporters in the courtroom that saw the voir dire process. That would be interesting to read up on. Like who we don't get to know the names of the jurors, right? That's confidential.
I don't believe so. Again, no
Yeah, yeah,
lawyer.
well, yeah, yeah. No,
Well,
by the way, the big thing that we're saying about this is we're following this for our audience. We think it matters, but we're not pretending that we understand the legal outcome. That being said, it's going to be a 6 or 8 week long trial. Um, there's some debate about whether or not Mark Zuckerberg is going to testify or not. And I presumably I presume that the states will call him, but again, just to get back to the organizing principle of this, this is 29 states. This is the attorney generals of almost 30 states out of 52 in the U.S. And California, Colorado, Kentucky, and New Jersey are the lead plaintiffs. But this not to disrespect the LA or New Mexico verdict, but this is a bigger case. It's a bigger case. And because their outcome strategy is change, not money damages, although they'll take the money, but but really product changes. To your point, when we began the pod, I mean, you know, you could argue that Meta could have written off New Mexico. They could have said, well, next New Mexico's X percentage of our income. We're just going to not fix it. We're going to geofence New Mexico. If you come in from New Mexico with an IP address, we just won't serve you the Instagram or Facebook pages. But you can't geofence 29 states.
yeah.
Um, I wonder if Meta internally has got a working group already planning for how they will implement these changes if they have to make them.
I would be shocked if they didn't have that to some degree.
You'd love to be able to find that existing. Somebody works there. All right. So this is again from our summary. The stakes are enormous. The trial is expected to last 6 to 8 weeks. The states reportedly are seeking penalties that could reach $200 billion. And they want changes in Meta's practices. Coming after Meta's Los Angeles loss and New Mexico case, Oakland could be the biggest yet of whether or not social platforms can be held legally responsible for the way they design products for kids.
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, while I believe only Meta is being sued in this case, presumably all the other social platforms are paying very close attention because um, so maybe to sum it up, we've got an advisory jury, we've got a judge who knows tech and is fierce. We've got 29 states, all, and think about this. I mean, I'll ask, uh, you have more people in your life that are lawyers than I do. But I mean, lawyers aren't hardwired to compromise or agree with each other. So you've got 29 states with an AG in each one who presumably fought over periods and commas and what we're going to sue on and how we're going to phrase that. And you'd love to see the track changes of that document that went, among 29 different litigants to get to a position that they now all agree. Um, States with very different backgrounds, very different politics. Um, do I sound excited? I'm a little excited.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch it play out. And I think that it's going to hit at a really interesting time. Again, I don't know when the decision would be broadcast. But Yeah, I think that we've seen success by approaching this issue from, product liability perspective, looking at the addictiveness, looking about, harvesting data. So I think it's a really interesting approach, the hook, harvest, hold kind of motto, and we'll see if, it actually works in the court of law. So I'm excited or I'm intrigued.
Fair enough. I also think it's worth just saying in terms of what's going on in society, what happens here is absolutely going to have ripple effects on what's happening in AI.
Yeah.
Um, Over breakfast this morning, I was talking with somebody about the fact that, you know, ChatGPT was released to the general public in 2022.
Hmm.
That's not a long time ago.
No.
So if you think about how that's rippled through society and the fact that if there are product liability cases, in the case of character AI being a good example, if this ends up being another product liability win for parents, then all of a sudden the impact of AI on students, schools, young people, society, relationships. So with that, we will watch it. We will not update you every day or every week because we have lots of other things to talk about, but we will track this closely and we'll be back soon. See ya.